views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome. You're listening to Spoofy Talk with host Madison Smith from Madison Paranormal Investigations and Girls vs. Ghosts. You can find Spoofy Talk live every other Sunday on Spreaker, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Pacific. Come join us on a live interaction chat on Spreaker.com by simply downloading the app on all devices. Brought to you by Paranormal Buzz Radio.
And here's your host, Madison Smith.
Hi everyone, I'm Madison Smith. I'd like to welcome you all to Spoopy Talk with Maddie. Tonight's show, I have an investigator I met at the old Manila Schoolhouse in Manila, Iowa, which I believe is no longer standing. He was filming for one of his shows, then he came to my from my home away from home, the old YMCA in Rock Island, after I told him about it. He's an author, publisher, and researcher, and also a filmmaker, and a CEO of Haunted Road Media. So, if anyone would like to give a big spoopy welcome to Mr. Mike Ricksecker.
Hi, Maddie.
Hey, welcome.
Thanks. You're right, we did meet at the Manila Schoolhouse. Did they tear that down?
I heard that they have. I'm not for sure, but I'm pretty sure that they did, sadly.
Okay. Yeah, well, there was a lot of black mold in that basement, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah. True.
It happens.
Mm-hmm. But it was a nice building.
It
other
was,
than the black mold.
Other than the black mold, yeah.
Okay, so before we start off, would you like to tell everyone about yourself and like where they can find you at and stuff?
Well, sure, we can start right off with that. So, yeah, Mike Ricksecker, primarily author, researcher, filmmaker, been on over the television shows like The Alaska Triangle, Ancient Aliens, and others. You can find me at MikeRicksecker.com. That's my personal website. My blog and also my learning platform is out at ConnectedUniversePortal.com. So I have all kinds of courses and things like that out there. So those are the two main places you can find me. And also ShadowDimension.com is where you can find my docuseries, The Shadow Dimension.
Mm-hmm. And what type of courses do you have?
Right now, the two big courses that are up there right now, Ancient Egypt, which is over 12 hours of footage diving into all things regarding esoteric Egypt. So pyramids, we got stargaze temples, all that wonderful stuff. Mm-hmm. The other big course is the Shadow Entities course, which gets into all of my research that I've been doing on shadow phenomena. It kind of highlights my book, A Walk in the Shadows. And it gets into all the different types of shadow phenomena, the sleep paralysis, what these things could possibly be, all that. And then on the membership side, there's a weekly online class, Connecting the Universe, and along with that is additionally like monthly Q&A videos, behind-the-scenes videos of all the projects that I've been working on, a boatload of articles, and there's a lot of stuff out there.
Mm-hmm. And then how many books have you written or just helped write?
I am up to, for my books, I'm up to 12. But with Haunted Road Media as a publisher, I think it's like 15, 20 authors, something like that. A couple of releases coming out this month. Michelle Hamilton is releasing it's Virginia's Haunted History. So this is another book where she grabs all the old historic newspaper articles of all the accounts of ghost sightings and things like that. And then Alexandra Holzer is releasing a book called The End is Near, which is actually a young adult novel about the apocalypse. So,
Okay. And then where can people find these books?
Well, Amazon, of course. You can go to hardroadmedia.com as well, but Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, the two main sources.
Okay. Okay, so when did you first start having the interest in the paranormal? Like, when did that start?
Yeah, that goes way back. I was a young child, about 8 years old. I mean, I'd always I guess you could say I always liked Scooby-Doo, right?
Of course.
Of course. And there's Ghostbusters, but Ghostbusters came out after an experience that I had when I was about 8 years old, and woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my room, and had no idea about like shadow people, shadow entities, that sort of thing at the time. I just thought there was an intruder in my room. Somebody had broken into the house and he was about to kill me. That's what I thought. Fortunately, I'm still alive to tell the tale, which is great. But it did get physical with me. It came up to my bed, leaned over. I'm just staring into this blank black face. I'm trying to scream. Nothing's coming out of my mouth because I'm just too terrified. And it grabbed me by the wrists, crossed my arms across my body, and ran off down the hall and, of all places, into a closet. By that point, I found my voice, found my legs, ran off to my parents' bedroom, screaming about what had happened. They tried to calm me down, console me, tried to tell me I just had a bad dream, but I'd been awake for this whole thing. So that was like the first significant experience. But when I really knew that this was going to be something that I was going to follow, and I'd had other experiences after that. But my friend David and I were at our friend Lori's house. This is when I was like 15 years old. And we're just in our living room talking teenage drama and all that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, Lori says, "I think my house is haunted." Now, she lived in an older historic house in the downtown of area, that town that we lived at. And so David and I are like, okay, cool, haunted house. So what makes it haunted? So she starts telling us some stories about the house, different things that have happened. There's old family cemetery in the backyard, stuff like that. Her main concern was that there was the one wall in her bedroom upstairs. Anytime that she would tack something up on, you have all that stuff behind you right now. For her, it would always fall down off the wall. She couldn't keep anything tacked up or mounted on this one wall. It would be like an hour, a day, a week later, or whatever, and it would always fall down off the wall. So she thinks the wall's haunted. So we're going to go upstairs and we're going to investigate. So kind of first little paranormal investigation, even though I had no idea that's what it was at the time. So we go up to her room. We're checking things out. She's telling us more stories about what happens. And I didn't know this about my friend David at the time, but he was very, very sensitive. And he put his hand flat to the wall. And all of a sudden, he turned this bright, bright red, starts sweating profusely. And I'm looking at David like, oh my gosh, what is going on with my friend? I was totally blown away by that. So he starts going like wall to wall in the house, like touching all these different walls, trying to see if there are any other hot spots, so to speak. And that was the moment that I knew that it was like, this is fascinating. I've never seen anything like this before, but this is fascinating. I'm going to be involved some way, shape, or form with this the rest of my life. And I have been. Yeah.
So when you were 8 years old and had that experience, do you think that could have been tied to sleep paralysis at all? Or was it just out of the picture?
Yeah, I didn't have sleep paralysis with that particular incident. Some people do, some people don't. I have had real sleep paralysis before, but not at that occasion. My mouth opened up. My arms obviously crossed across my body. When the thing ran off down the hall, my head was able to turn and I could watch it go. So I didn't have sleep paralysis with that one. And I believe sleep paralysis and shadow phenomenon are two different phenomena that can happen at the same time. We witness shadow people all different times a day. It's not always while we're sleeping. We could be walking around the house and all of a sudden we see a shadow run down the hall. We're out on paranormal investigations and we see shadows all the time. So it's not directly related to sleep. Okay.
And then for the wall incident, did you ever figure out what was wrong with the wall?
We never figured out what was wrong with the wall. No, I actually I got grounded after that incident because I was out later than I should have been.
Oh, man.
So yeah, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere for some weeks. And by the time I got off that grounding, I was working my summer job and just, never got back around to following that one up. And again, I had no idea it was a paranormal investigation. You follow those things up and all that at that time. At that time, it was 1989, 1990, somewhere around there. I think it was 89. And we didn't know about paranormal investigations. There was, we didn't have the television shows or anything like that. There was In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, and every once in a while they might show some, paranormal investigations like that. But again, it was very, very different at that time.
Mm-hmm. And then after that incident, what was like your first official paranormal investigation?
That's a good question. Because I did, probably about 15 years ago, something like that. It would have been a residential case, I guess it was with the Oklahoma team. Because a lot of the stuff that I was doing before that, it was researching for my book, Ghosts of Maryland, and things like that. I was going to haunted historic locations, and I was researching, and I suppose you could call some of it investigative work, like as far as like a paranormal investigation, but not in the whole sense of you have all this equipment and the whole team's out there setting up cameras everywhere. That sort of thing happened with the first team I got with in Oklahoma. Prior to that, it was, again, you could call it an investigation, but not in the conventional sense that we think of today.
Okay, and then what has been your favorite paranormal investigation that you have done?
Oh, I have a lot of favorites. That's a tough
Name them
question. Okay.
We're going to be here for a while. We have time. We're good.
I'll say this. I've kind of compartmentalized it a little bit. So my favorite haunted house is a stone line in Guthrie, Oklahoma. My favorite haunted historic building would be the Mineral Springs Hotel in Alton, Illinois. But let me tell you about Stone Lion. And so we had a really interesting investigation there. We probably investigated there half dozen times or something like that. And this one night, just doing baseline EMF reading of the house before we get started with the investigation. And I'm walking through the library. Now this place is just beautiful. It's. You've got this old lacquered wood. You've got all these books all over the place. Marbled fireplace, absolutely beautiful. But nothing ever happened in that room. At least never happened to us before. It's usually a pretty quiet room compared to the rest of the house, like some of the upstairs bedrooms and the basement, things like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of casually walking through the library, not thinking anything's going to happen. And all of a sudden, as I near the fireplace, this wave of energy hit me. And I was about to pass out I was carrying a K2 at the time, and that just spiked out into the red. I was like, whoa. And so I had to kind of like grab myself, and the others that were with me were like, oh, are you okay? They almost had to catch me. And I'll be fine, caught my breath. So finished up doing the baseline EMF sweep, and we get started into the investigation. So we're in the entrance hall, and what's interesting about this place in the entrance hall, there's a lot of cool stuff in there. So the entrance hall has an old embalming table, because the house for about 8 years during the 1930s was used as a mortuary. So the entrance hall has the old embalming table. There's a Egyptian sarcophagus on the far wall. It's just really, really cool stuff. And one of the interesting features is there's this bureau that's in the entrance hall to block off this set of doors to what had been the parlor. Because it's a bed and breakfast now, they kind of cordoned that off and made it a suite, a room that they would rent out for the night. So they have this bureau sitting there. One of the drawers was open a little bit. We noticed this. Don't really pay it any mind. So, okay, the drawer's open a little bit, but for whatever reason, we took note of it. We passed that, and we go to the actual entrance that they're using for the parlor suite these days. And as we're just getting into that room, we're about to start our investigation, we all of a sudden heard this boom, this slam from back out in the entrance hall. Like, what the heck's that? So we go running out there, and we notice that the door had been closed. Something had slammed it shut. So The one investigator with us, Johnny, he gets out his tri-field meter. He's getting some readings. I start snapping some photos. And in this one photograph, I caught this fantastic white wisp between Johnny and the Bureau. So, it's like, okay, maybe that was the entity that slammed the door. But wait, we're not done. So we did a little kind of mini investigation out there in the entrance hall for about 10 minutes. And we decide, when we finished up with that we're going to split up, because when we were back in the parlor suite, we kind of realized it was really small for the whole group. So half the team was going to go back to the parlor suite, and I start leading a team up the stairs. I got up to there's kind of a middle landing in that staircase, and one of the other girls starts up. And right between us, this framed photograph just, boom, crashed to the stairs. Neither one of us had touched it, and it just shatters all over the stairs. So that was a pretty wild evening with that particular location. So, but I love that house. You just walk up to it, and you're like, yeah, that's a haunted house. But when you're inside, it's got like the really creepy, cool ambience. I told you about some of the things that are in there, like the embalming table, and just kind of the ornate nature of the building. Is just it's beautiful, it's historic, it's creepy cool. I love that place.
And then Mineral Springs, I want to know your experiences that you had there.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences there, because I'd lived out in Illinois for a couple of years, and it was right down the road, and we were really good friends with Dave and Donna Nunnally, who run It's Raining Zen, the metaphysical shop that's there. Became really good friends with them. And so they were like, yeah, whenever you want to come down, you can come down and investigate. Cool. So I was down there all the time. But yeah, a lot of interesting things there. We did some, because they have the fountains that are there. So the one day we did some interesting water-based EVP work. Our friend Lee Ehrlich came up from Florida, and he's done a lot of investigations underwater. Where he's a professional scuba diver, and he does a lot of like deep sea salvage and stuff like that. So he's had paranormal experiences down in sunken ships and things like that. So so we had him up, and he was teaching us how to do water-based EVPs off of running water. And so you stand back, several feet from the fountain. We were off the Grand Ballroom. There's this hallway that leads down to, there's an upholstery shop down there, but there's a fountain. And so we're standing like halfway down the hall, and between the lump, lump, lump of the water, you can hear voices. And so we're asking questions like, where are you from? And we're getting intelligent responses, like St. Louis. How old are you? 33, stuff like this. So that was a really interesting night when we did that. The most significant night, though, was following the 100 Media Paracon a few years back. It was after the second Paracon that we ran down there. And late in the evening, just a handful of us left. We were in the upstairs abandoned part of the hotel, and we were in the corner suite that's known as Pearl's room, which there's a confirmed suicide there, and get a lot of activity in there. There's get a lot of EVPs there. People have seen Pearl kind of peeking out of the closet and things like that, and they have a nice little memorial set up there for her with some flowers and things like that. So we're doing some work in her room. And all of a sudden, from down the hall, we start hearing some noises. So I venture out into the hallway, and I'm looking down the hall, and all of a sudden there's this black smoke that starts building up at the end of the hall. It's coming closer and closer. And what was interesting is, as it was coming closer, it would start to creep up the right-hand side of the wall, and it would creep back down, creep back up, and creep back down. All the while, it's coming closer and closer. And finally, one of these times that it creeps up the right-hand side of the wall, it morphs into the apparition of a little girl. And by then, everybody else had joined me out there. There were like 5 of us up there. And we all saw this little girl. We're trying to coax her to come closer, come closer. And she ended up stopping right by this one doorway in the hallway where people had talked about in that room there being the spirit of a little girl, which was kind of interesting because we'd done some work in there before and never really got anything with her, even though people had talked about her for a long, long time. And, people put teddy bears and things like that in that room for her. Mm-hmm. But finally, we saw her. She had walked down the hall and was hanging out by that doorway. So that was an absolutely fascinating moment. That was the moment of my research into shadow phenomena that I knew that some of these shadow entities we experience are actually human spirits, because I just saw one manifest into a girl.
Mm-hmm. And then, did you have any experiences in the pool area downstairs, or no?
Yeah, the pool area is kind of an interesting area. I haven't had a lot of experiences there. People that I've been with in that room have had a lot of things going on within the pool. Where I got something was on the back side of the pool in the one corner as you come in through the main door to the left-hand side in the back. And there's like some old doors and things like that back there leaning against the wall. And that's where like I would feel like, somebody poking me, kind of playing behind my ear. Sometimes I'd get like a little lightheaded back there because it was just, some sort of energy. But other people have kind of been poked and grabbed. We call him Mr. Fast and Grabby back there. But other people have picked up on the little girl at the pool. Now, she didn't die in the pool, but she seems to be a visitor coming back to a place that she enjoyed. There's one confirmed death down there. And then there's a guy named William who kind of hangs out in this one dark room back on the other side of the pool. Some people, I guess, have experienced him coming out from that area into the pool area, but he usually hangs out in that back area.
And then, so for your books, what's the weirdest place that you've gone to for one of your books?
The weirdest place that I've gone to for one of my books? That's an interesting question. Weird place. Define weird, because
just like interesting, just like out of the norm,
Wow. Yeah, because there's a lot of great historic locations that I've been to. I'm trying to think of one that you would actually call weird. Of course, a lot of residential. Sorry, I'm trying to brace. I've never had anybody ask me a weird place. Some different locations that people, I suppose, wouldn't normally go to. Like we investigated there along the Illinois River, the Campsville Locks. Now, people don't normally go down there to investigate as far as, for paranormal activity. They go down there exploring, which is kind of what we were doing. But we were, running a little mini investigation at the time, too. And we caught some interesting photographs that looked like, possible fairy activity, that sort of thing. And really, when we first saw those photographs, we weren't sure what we were looking at. But several months later, we were up the river a few miles at the old Goldenrod showboat, which unfortunately that one's gone. And we had experienced definitely some sort of fairy activity up there. That was an absolutely amazing night. So we kind of connected the two that, okay, even though we didn't see it when we were down there at the locks and we just caught it on the photograph, it seems like that's really what we ended up seeing up at the Goldenrod showboat.
All right. So going off of that question, like another place, what has been like the most interesting place that you've been to, like history-wise?
Oh, that one's tough because there's a lot of great historic places. Mineral Springs is one that I love. It has a real rich history. The Goldenrod showboat had a lot of real rich history to it. Samuel Mudhouse, that's a fascinating location in Maryland. That's where John Wilkes Booth and his accomplice David Harrell had stopped off along the way after they had assassinated President Lincoln. It kind of did the whole route. I've been to Ford's Theater. I've done the Surratt House, the Mud House, even the old Surratt boarding house. Not an investigation, but it's a restaurant now. It's a Chinese restaurant. I spent a year working in downtown Washington, D.C., and it was like a few blocks up from where I worked. So we'd go up there and have Chinese food. It's called Walk and Roll. But it used to be the Surratt boarding house where they came up with the assassination plot. But the Mud House is really, really fascinating. The people have caught the apparition of Dr. Mudd on camera there. What the interesting thing that happened to me there, every time I go there's something that goes wrong with my electronics. There's one time I lost all my audio and I'm trying to film and all my audio was gone. The first time I was ever there though, I'd gone with my daughter and we're getting the tour and talking to the docents about some of the things that happened there. We're taking a bunch of photographs. and my daughter Ariel had some things happen to her while we were there. So that was kind of interesting. The things that she was feeling. So I got home and got all my notes and my interviews from them and my daughter's experiences, but all my photographs were gone. It's like, what in the world? So I head back one day. It was on a Monday, if I recall correctly. But when I got there, unfortunately, everything was closed up. It was an hour and a half drive, and I'm like, oh God, you gotta be kidding me. So I'm like, all right, I'll take some photographs here from the front gate, and even though it'll be up on the hill, fine, whatever, it'll work. But as I'm getting out of the car to take the photographs, a truck pulls up, and it's one of the doses, and he says, well, we actually it's an off day for us. We haven't closed up, but I'm opening up for a private tour. You can come on up, and as I'm opening up the house, you can take your photographs, and okay, fine, that'll work. So we do that. So, we're walking through the house. I'm getting some photographs. He's telling me stories, some other things that I start asking, what are the type of experiences you've had here? And so, as we're walking up the stairs to the second floor, he starts talking about the room in which John Wilkes Booth had slept. This is the room where they found the boot under the bed that basically got Dr. Mudd convicted of conspiracy, which is still debatable today whether he was involved in the plot or not. I tend to agree he was not. So he's talking about how in the mornings many times that they will walk into that room and there's the impression on the bed as if somebody had been sleeping in there. And so he's telling me this story as we're going upstairs. We walk into that room. He goes to open up the shades, and I look down at the bed, and I said, you mean an impression like this? Because sure enough, there was this impression in the bed as if somebody had been sleeping in it. And it was funny because he starts going off like, see, this is what I'm talking about. We have to come up here. We have to fix it. We have to make it look nice for the public, blah, blah, blah. He's all upset, and he's making a move to go fix it. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Can I get a photo of it first? So I get a couple of photographs, and then he finally fixes it up. But so I have one of the apparently rare photographs of this phenomenon because they are really adamant about making sure this bed looks all nice for the public. But there it was, the impression of it. And sure enough, it did look like somebody had been sleeping in that bed.
Yeah. So, how old is your daughter?
She just turned 27. Okay.
What was her first investigation that she's been on with you?
Yeah, so that time at the Mud House would have been the first, haunted historic location that she would have gone with for something like that. Again, it was one of those where it's we did some minor investigative work while we were there, but not really. So it wasn't a real paranormal investigation. She did some residential cases with us when she was about 16 years old, and she had a couple of historic locations. It would have been one of the residential cases. That I could not tell you which one, but she did some historic locations as well with us out in Oklahoma. Did some cemeteries as well. Somewhere along the way, she got more into boys and being a teenager and all that stuff, and just ended up not doing that anymore. But yeah, she was doing that for a while. And the funny thing is, my kids thought one time that I brought something home with me. And and Ariel was giving me a hard time, but the others were too, and some of them don't necessarily believe in all of it, but it was funny because my middle son Chase, he's one that's I don't believe in ghosts, but then he'd get on me about this light that kept turning on. It was in the living room on the ceiling fan, and just out of nowhere the light would suddenly turn on. And he'd be like, you brought something home with you. I didn't believe in this stuff, Chase. Well, you brought something home with you. Okay. So and this thing would pop on, and I tried telling them it's just, because it had a remote. I was like, I think one of the buttons on the remote is sticky or something, trying to explain it away. And I never thought I brought anything home with me anyway. I always thought, there was something that was in the house. There were a lot of times that I thought it was my grandfather because he had just recently passed away at that time. So he would visit several family members. So in any case, this one day, it was just myself and my youngest son, Cameron, at home. The others were out, and we were actually getting ready to go meet up with them to join them for a movie. And all of a sudden, boom, that light turns on. And I'm like, oh, really, right now? And so I'm like, all right, fine. If this is somebody that's trying to reach out and deliver a message, you have to impress me more than that. And all of a sudden, the light starts blinking.
Oh.
So it's like, okay, now you have my attention. And so I was like, I only have a few minutes. I got out the audio recorder. And it's like, I never do like EVP work and stuff like that at home. But this is one time it's like, I'm going to make an exception to this rule. And I got out the audio recorder. I started doing a little EVP work. And I did get a couple of messages. And then we went off to go check out the movie. But that was pretty interesting. So I had to give it to my kids that time. And I still believe it was my grandfather. So I had to finally admit to them, okay, the light was something paranormal. Yes.
Okay, guys, you were right.
Yeah, you're right. I'll admit when I'm wrong.
Yeah. And then, so what are your thoughts on kids investigating?
That's a very personal question for you, because you've been investigating since you were very young. I'll tell you what I told your dad those years ago when I first met you. It's you have questions that you want answered, and you're very curious. At a young age, it's you are taking a risk because some of the more nefarious spirits could target a younger child. But when we walk into any historic location, many of these places are haunted. Even if we're doing a daytime tour, it has nothing to do with the paranormal. That's just purely historic tour. You're still putting yourself into a historic location that may have hauntings and spirits in that type of energy there. So I mean, what I told your dad was just but you're here with her, you're supervising. So as long as you're supervising, as a parent, you're parenting right now. So okay.
Yeah, which is reasonable.
Right. Where I get worried about with kids is a lot of them will just watch a television show. Oh, hey, I can do that, and a group of 10-year-olds goes out into an abandoned building, and then they get themselves hurt. Not even because of anything supernatural, but because they fall through the floor or something like that. And you hear sometimes of these unfortunate incidents where children get seriously hurt. Or it was in the 90s, Belle Isle in Oklahoma, where it was an old power plant, and they were out there. It was a 12-year-old girl, and she fell like 3 stories, and she ended up dying. So it's stuff like that where I get concerned. So I think as long as with the young child there's parental supervision in it, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I feel like as long as that you're safe, kind of thing, go for it. Yeah. But once there's like some sort of a risk that's health, that's when I just draw the line. Right,
exactly. And you can't deny a person's curiosity, especially, kids are curious about everything. Oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? You're kind of new into the world, so you want to know what stuff is. So, totally get it.
Yeah, and then, so, investigating. Have you ever had an experience, with children on investigations, or no?
With, child spirits, or?
Literally just anything at this point. I just want to hear stuff.
Okay. I kind of told you the incident with the little girl up there in Mineral Springs. There have been other child spirits along the way, where, a lot of different locations, different residential locations, where there was a child who had perished in the home. And that's tough. And sometimes it's like the daughter of the person that's living there, and their spirit has come back. So those are really hard to work with, because there's a lot of just really counseling that needs to be done there. That in many cases should be done by a professional counselor and not necessarily a paranormal investigator. But it's one of those where it's like, okay, we're here, we'll answer these sort of questions for you. But there's a lot of trauma and grief you're dealing with. So you should also go see a professional for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I agree with, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, do you think children are more, open to the paranormal, per se?
Yeah, absolutely. There's something along the way that happens in the human mind. And I think it's a lot of social conditioning. We didn't have this so much thousands of years ago, where societies in general were more spiritual in nature, where we were very, very open to having spirituality be a part of our everyday life. Now, well, I used to say these days, but over the last 25, 30 years, we've become a lot more open to this again, which is great. But there was a period of time where it was like, if you saw ghosts or heard voices or anything like that, then it was shunned. No, you're not allowed to talk about that. It didn't happen. You might get, find yourself in a straitjacket and put into a mental hospital. So people didn't talk about it. They had to close themselves off. But people still experience things. And, with kids, just coming from a spiritual realm into the world, you're new in a physical body, you've still just recently touched that spiritual realm. So you're still seeing things, you're still experiencing things. And, kids will see all kinds of stuff. I mean, when I was like 5 or 6 years old, I had something that I still to this day can't specifically say it was something paranormal, but I ended up going downstairs. It was my grandparents' house. I ended up going downstairs the next morning and telling my grandfather, I don't know how to tell you this, but you have a blinking gorilla in your bedroom upstairs. That's what I related it to. There's a blinking gorilla. So it was something. I don't know what. So kids are seeing all kinds of different things, and it just kind of gets shunned. So they end up getting conditioned into don't believe it, don't believe it, don't believe it. And at some point in time with a lot of people, that it ends up turning off. And for like a lot of girls your age, it will kick back on, as a young teenager, and that's a really fascinating time for a lot of girls too. So, so yeah, kids are definitely more in tune. But people later on in life can re-explore that. I've heard of people just not really for most of their adult life not really having any experiences, nothing really going on at all. All of a sudden, they have an interaction with maybe it's a ghost or an apparition or whatever, and all of a sudden something clicks and it all turns back on again. So something about touching that type of energy again just opened the door, and their energy, resonance, vibration kind of remembered, oh yes, there's this other world out here that exists, and it opens back up for them.
Okay, and then before we move on from this, blinking gorilla. I need to hear more about this blinking gorilla.
Yeah, like I said, I was about 5 or 6 years old, and here's what I remember. So I'm laying down in the bedroom, my grandparents' house. We were visiting, staying over for, I think we were there for like a week or whatever. And in the doorway to that bedroom one night, I saw this thing. It was kind of whitish in nature, standing in the doorway. It was shorter, so it wasn't like as tall as an adult. It was shorter and kind of stocky, and it would like fade in and out. It was like blinking. Now, some people hear the story and they're like, well, what about cars passing? Well, no, because my bedroom back at my house, cars would pass all the time, and I always saw the way the lights reacted in my room as the cars would drive by. So this wasn't that. It was just this thing standing there in the doorway, kind of looking at me, stocky, and it would blink in and out, blink in and out. And so my young mind at that age related it to a gorilla for whatever reason. So, so that's about all the details I can give you on that. The next morning I went down and told my grandfather what I saw. My father still cracks up to this day about it, because he was standing in the kitchen when I told my grandfather that. He still gets a laugh out of it.
Imagine having a kid just walk up to you. Yeah, there's a blinking gorilla.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'd cry.
It was pretty humorous. Yeah, I know, but it was something I saw. I always said when somebody asked me what my first paranormal experience was. What I usually tell the shadow person story, and what I call it is my first significant paranormal experience. So, because I did have the blinking gorilla, and there was also another incident where I would have been like 5, 6 years old, maybe 7, I don't know. I had had a bad dream the night before, and I ended up in my parents' bedroom. And as I woke up the next morning, my parents are crashed out on either side. They're asleep. And I was looking toward their closet, and I saw hovering there what looked like this little girl. And she had like kind of blondish, golden brown hair. I remember, to me, she looked like an attractive little girl. And she kind of hovered there for a little while, and then she kind of dissipated away. And when my mom woke up, I told her about what I had seen, and she thought that I was kind of dreaming or whatever. That might have still been a kind of asleep or whatever, which I kind of ignored that comment. And I just asked her, do you think that's the girl I'm going to marry? I can imagine how cute that might have sounded.
Okay.
So,
oh my.
Again, I'm not exactly sure what I saw because I was so young. So I always chalk up the shadow experience as my first significant paranormal experience, because the other ones, because that was where this thing got physically interacted with me, where the others were kind of, just, a moment here and a moment there. And I was so young, I'm not sure exactly what it is I saw.
Yeah. And honestly, kids say like the darndest things.
Yeah.
Like, they say the craziest things.
Yeah,
and they make it so honest and blunt. Like,
yeah.
like, I love it. Like, they can be so mean, but they try to make it a compliment.
Right. Oh, I know if I had been my parents at that time, like if one of my kids had said that to me at that age, oh yeah, I would have cracked up. I would have thought it was the cutest thing. Yeah.
No, so my mom runs a daycare, right? And I hear it. Like, the weirdest things just out of context.
Oh,
and one time we were at Walmart, and one of the kids was like, I like your teeth. They're my favorite color.
Oh, my gosh.
It was so bad. And I was just sitting there.
All right.
I was just sitting there, and I was like, I just looked over, and this person just looked down at the kid and was just like just holding back tears.
That's really cute.
And the kid still goes here.
Does he?
Mm-hmm. Like sometimes kids worry me. But at the same time, it's like, y'all are gonna be like little comedians.
Oh, it's what I always liked with my kids was when they would mispronounce stuff.
Oh
like
yes.
Like my oldest son Colin, one time he hurt his elbow. He's like, I hurt my belbow. My belbow, and he's pointing at it.
No, so hear me out.
Go ahead.
Okay, so grandpas and grandmas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine this little kid mispronouncing your name, and you end up with the stupidest name for the last years of your life.
Oh, yeah. That'll happen. Kids can't pronounce certain names, and yeah.
Yeah. Like, sometimes I feel bad, but then at the same time, I'm like, you know what? If you enjoy it, go for it.
Just at that point, just go with it, because the kid can't, he's only got so much he can get out of his mouth. So,
Yeah, but then the worst part is the parents of the kid start saying that too. So it's just like your permanent name.
It becomes your permanent nickname, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, Meemaw. No.
It's all good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What has been the most interesting book, in your opinion, that you've written?
Probably A Walk in the Shadows. Although I really do like the Alaska's Mysterious Triangle as well. So the last two, because I'm starting to get into a lot deeper topics where, before it was kind of recounting paranormal experiences. Of course, I wrote some fiction in there as well. Or the Maryland and Oklahoma books were more like historical accounts, historic hauntings, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Where, like A Walk in the Shadows and Alaska's Mysterious Triangle are actually getting into, what's behind this phenomenon. We're getting into more of, ancient history and the way ancient cultures perceived some of this phenomenon, and, how science in some ways is actually proving the different things that we're talking about. So, I've always had an interest in time travel, and you have things like the Anita Project down in Antarctica showing that there's a parallel universe running in reverse time. So this is stuff that I'm bringing up in the Triangle book. and I'm going to explore more in my next book, Connecting the Universe. But yeah, Walk in the Shadows, sure, we get into different types of shadow phenomenon, kind of dispelling some of the myths about the relationship between sleep paralysis and shadow phenomenon. But the real meat of the book to me is the third section, when I start getting into what exactly this phenomenon could be. Is it are they human spirits? Are they extraterrestrials? Are they time travelers? Are they interdimensional beings? Get into like Doppelganger phenomenon, and just some of these shadows that people see, end up being a twin of themselves from another point in time. So even kind of almost getting off the whole shadow person incident for a moment there, and getting more into, wait a minute, some of these doppelganger sightings are actually ourselves at another point in time. So it's more like a time slip sort of thing. So all that stuff is really fascinating to me. So it's all interconnected. It's all related. It's the way the spiritual energy is manifesting itself, and how we're able to perceive that with our senses in this world.
And have you ever had any experience with a doppelganger?
Personally, I don't believe so. Not myself. I've collected a number of those different stories, but I don't think I've seen my own doppelganger at this point.
Which is understandable, Might take a while. Who knows?
Yeah, well,
One day.
I mean, it's a rare occurrence, but when it does happen, it's really fascinating and very interesting, because. Well, okay, let me tell this story. So this is one that was recently conveyed to me that I slipped into. I call it edition 2.5 of A Walk in the Shadows. So when I brought A Walk in the Shadows, the second edition, out onto audio, I slipped in like 10 more pages into the written book as well. So, but when I was on another podcast back in November, a story that was related to me, there was this young adult guy that recounted this tale of when he was younger, when he was a boy, he had walked into the kitchen of his house, and he saw this tall, dark, hooded figure standing by the kitchen table. Scared him to death, so he ran out of the room. So you're thinking, okay, dark hooded shadow person. Well, years later, he's in the kitchen and he's making a sandwich at the table. He's wearing a hoodie. He looks over by the kitchen doorway. Something catches his eye. He looks over there, and he sees this shorter shadow person about the size of a child standing there in the doorway. And all of a sudden, it runs off. And it dawns on him right then and there, like, oh my gosh, that was myself when I was a boy. When I was a boy, I saw myself as I am right now in the hoodie making the sandwich. It just came off as a shadow in that moment. So it's a doppelganger story, but it's really himself, some sort of time slip. And the way the energy was resonating at that point in time, the most that it could come off as was a shadow rather than like a full-blown apparition or fully formed person. So it was a fascinating story.
And then, why do you believe it only came off as a shadow and not a full apparition?
That's a good question. So, everything in this world is energy, resonance, vibration. Even down at the molecular level, atoms are always, they're vibrating. Nothing's actually solid, although it appears so to us. So with everything as energy, we perceive, depending on the frequency range that is vibrating at, we see only, so much of it. So there are plenty of things, because we only see in a certain range. There are many things around us right now that we can't see. And I don't even talk about supernatural stuff. Like, we don't see radio waves and things like that, but they're out there. They're around us. There's certain light frequencies that we can't see. And so, like, a good example of this is that little girl that we saw at Mineral Springs. When we saw her, we all saw her a little bit differently. We didn't all see her fully formed. Like, I saw her fully formed from her head down to about her knees, and then she started to dissipate away. There are others that were with us that saw her fully formed at the feet, and then as it went up, it dissipated away at her head. So we all saw her a little bit differently. And that's because we each, our body's resonance falls within a range, but we're all a little different. And even the little girl herself has her own frequency that she's vibrating at. So it just depended on how close you were to syncing up with her. So that's what I'm thinking is happening in some of these different, like that doppelganger case, that shadow. I think it's because it didn't quite sync up enough to be able to fully see it, but it did sync up enough where you could get a glimpse of there's actually something there.
Mm-hmm. Do you think if they moved closer that they would see it at all? Like a full apparition other than the shadow?
I don't know about moving closer because it's. I don't think it's a distance issue. I think it's a frequency issue, and so moving closer is not going to really affect the frequency that much. I mean, you moving closer, as far as like your bodily, energy. Like we all have a toroidal field of energy that surrounds us. That like when somebody steps into that field of energy, you feel their presence, you feel them close by. So getting closer will affect that, where you'll be able to really sense something. Okay, something's really near, something's really close. Mm-hmm. So that, but as far as being able to see it clearer, I don't think so.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's an amazing story. I'm going to be honest. Like, I could never handle that at all.
Yes, you will. You can handle that.
No, like imagine making a sandwich and then just looking over to see childhood you.
Yeah,
I'd freak out.
Wild. That would be wild.
I would freak out. Like honestly, I would freak out.
Would you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I think I would be shocked. I think I would just be shocked. Like, whoa, am I really seeing that right now?
No, for me, childhood me was just like a little bit too much,
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Like a little bit too much energy. Calm down.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, you might be, if you had a lot of energy and you're running around all over the place, it might be one of those shadows that runs by real quick, like, oh, there she goes.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be it, yeah. Sounds about right.
Right.
Like I was one of those kids.
Were you? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, my parents had like one of those little child leashes.
Oh, jeez.
It was a little monkey backpack.
Little monkey backpack? Oh.
Yeah.
That's cute.
It was great. It was great.
Nice.
And the thing is, I still think that I have it somewhere. I just don't know where.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool if you do. Yeah, hang on to stuff like that's a treasure. Hang on to that.
Yeah, guys, hang on to the monkey backpack.
Hang on to the monkey backpack.
Use it for your future dog children. Even better.
There you go.
No, but like honestly, personally, I think people should use child backpacks for dogs, or like make them, because like how convenient that would be, like putting like little doggy bags and stuff in there.
Oh, and have them carry something around?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
here, me.
You carry your own doggy bags.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Carry yourself.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you're thirsty? Pour the water. You got it.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work.
You can't grab it? Well, that's too bad. Grow some thumbs. You'll be fine. Gosh. Oh, okay. What's a really good question?
You've had some good ones.
I know. I'm running out. What can I say? Okay. So, the Alaska Mysterious Triangle. How was it getting that information?
That was kind of a fun project to work on because I'd been stationed up in Alaska for 3 years when I was in the Air Force, 1992 and 1995. And it was just by happenstance, really, that it worked out. That I don't know what to say this. So they reached out to me, not about Alaska. They had reached out to me about my research on portals, vortices, ley lines, that sort of stuff. They came across one of my videos I posted on YouTube a few years back. And so we're just doing a little, pre-interview sort of thing. And they're asking me about some of that research. And they asked me, well, what about that type of phenomenon in Alaska? Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, so you mean like the Alaska Triangle? And they're like, well, yeah, that's actually the show.
Of course.
It's like, great. It's like, no, I got stories because I've been stationed up there. So we did the show and everything, which was great. And it was fantastic to get back up there and kind of visit some of my old haunts. And then they had me on the side of a mountain for an entire day, which was starting to get a little chilly up there after a while. We did the whole thing with the dowsing rods and all that up there, which was kind of a shot in the dark, but it worked out because we actually found one of the lines up there. That was great. But when I started doing the research for the book, I covered a number of things from the television shows. Mm-hmm. I got to re-explore some of my own experiences that I'd had up there. And, I got as I did research into other phenomenon and kind of get a deeper history into some of the things that we covered on the show, because, it's only like a scratching the surface on the show. Mm-hmm. I got to learn a lot of things that I just didn't really know about before up in Alaska, even though I'd spent that time up there. I was a young guy. I was kind of more concerned with, for one, I was homesick. For two, I was, in the military, so you kind of have to stay focused. And, then I got married and had a family really young, so I was kind of focused on other things rather than all the phenomena that happened up there, although I did experience things up there. So it was fun to kind of re-explore a lot of that and kind of go back into a younger part of my life and dig into some of those different things, get into some of the old photographs and try to jog my memory on things that happened and remembering names and dates and just doing the historic research, which I always enjoy, and finding things in like some of the Native American lore that just blew my mind. When I started doing a little bit of work in research on giants, came across this old handwritten tome from it was a guy back in the 1930s who was a native Inuit, and he wanted to record a number of the different legends before they were forgotten about, and he just wrote it all out by hand, 500 pages. And it's very, very broken English, but he told a lot of interesting stories about the giants coming over from Siberia, which kind of sent me down the path of, are these possibly related to the Denisovans, that they're, discovering these different bone fragments and what have you out in Siberia, Laos, the Tibetan area. Did they venture, because they're supposed to be bigger humanoid type people, did they venture across the land bridge into Alaska, which is a question that I kind of posed. And then there were some of the stories about the giants interbreeding with human women and producing this other unusual offspring. And it's like reading the story, it's like, well, wait a minute, this is like the Nephilim story out of the Book of Genesis and the Book of Enoch, with the Watchers and getting together with humans and creating the giants and all this. And it was like, why is this story in Alaska? So that type of research really fascinated me. They're starting to make other, these different connections around the world.
Mm-hmm. All right. So our time is almost over. So thank you for being on.
Thank you, Maddie.
It was very fun. And before, I ended off, once more, would you like to promote yourself, where they can find you and your books and everything else?
Sure, absolutely. MikeRicksecker.com is where you can find all of that wonderful information about me and links to the books and all that. ConnectedUniversePortal.com is the online learning platform, all the courses. That's where I keep my blog these days. So a lot of great information out there. And then ShadowDimension.com, where you can find all the links to where you can watch the Shadow Dimension docuseries. So best place to go is 2BTV, but there's some other platforms it's on as well.
Okay. So once again, I'd really like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're very busy, so thank you for coming on. It was very fun, and I hope that you had fun as well.
Absolutely. You take care.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so now for all my listeners out there, I'd like to say thank you for being with me tonight. I'm taking a short break, so watch for my next guest to be posted in August. Make sure if you're not following me, give me a follow at Madison Paranormal Investigation on Facebook and Maddie_Paranormal_Investigation on Instagram. So for tonight, peace, love, and happiness. And most of all, be spoopy, everyone.